everyone, and welcome back to Politics Relax podcast. And before we begin this episode, I just want to remind you that next week our Sarah Olney interview is coming out. We've also got a little teaser in this episode as well. So make sure you start on this. I'm going to start on this issue of patriotism. It's come up 3 times in completely different news articles this week. We saw Labour, a leaked document saying that Labour are going to dress smarter, cover themselves in Union Jacks, and be more patriotic. Was a leaked report from Labour to try and appeal to the Red Wall and veterans. That was it. And then we also had somebody tweeting about butter, which had a Union Jack flag on. And Twitter, right-wing Twitter, went absolutely crazy for this woman saying she didn't want a UKIP advert in her fridge. It was a butter with a Union Jack on. Completely unrelated. And then Jacob Rees-Mogg today wore a Union Jack mask in Twitter, and then in Parliament, and left-wing Twitter then went off at him. So we've had a lot of this talk around patriotism. But before we open up to the panel, I want to start. Earlier today we spoke to Sarah Olney, and I asked her if she was a patriot, and let's hear her response. Would you call yourself?
I absolutely would, and honestly, there isn't a politician who isn't. You know what motivates us to get into politics is that we are proud of where we live. We like where we live. We like being, a citizen of this country, but we're not blind to its faults. And it's kind of like we see how it can be improved. We see how this can be a great country. But these are the things we think need to happen to really make the most of what's great about this country.
That is Sarah Olney speaking to us earlier when I asked her if she was a patriot. So now I want to open it up to the floor. We've got loads of people here, so I want to give as much time for everybody. So Daniel, do you want to start?
Well, I think that most people are very proud of the UK. I think that we live in a great country, and I think there's obviously ways we must improve, the country. But I think that having a Union Jack behind your Zoom call or interview is just ridiculous. It's pandering to racists and UKIP supporters, in all honesty. And it's just not going to help anybody really. Having a Union Jack is not going to show someone that you care about your country like any more than any other people. It's just going to say that you're going to say to UKIP supporters or more right-wing people that you care about them, when it just does absolutely nothing to help anyone really.
Yeah, definitely. Jose, yeah.
Right. So firstly, let me just point something out. Through my name, I think you can understand I'm not actually from the UK, but I just want to point out I was born in the UK and I'm very proud to be British. I think the UK has given me and my parents a lot of stuff that their former countries somewhat failed to give them, which is mainly opportunity. I think you can have whatever mask you want. You can do whatever you want. I think the fact that Daniel just said that they have Union Jack flag in the background appeals to the extreme right and right-wing people just blows my mind. The fact that he has a flag, you can just do whatever you want. It's a free country. He can has it. I think comparing the Union Jack as putting the Union Jack there as a right-wing racist, I'm not saying you said it was racist, but somewhat racist thing, is the stupidest thing alive. In my house, I have flags. Portugal, I have Greek and Portuguese flags, and I'm proud to have them. And I have it, and I would have a Union Jack one as well. But you can have whatever you want. You can have something. You can have a flag with a Union Jack with a cross through it. I don't care. I'm just saying the fact that he had it is not a racist symbol. It just proves that he may be proud of his country. I think to compare it to racist, but to something that's racist is just completely unfair.
I don't think the flag is racist in itself, but I think it's been hijacked by racists. That's why I think a lot of people are wary to use it. People like the EDL and Tommy Robinson and Nigel Farage have hijacked this flag to be foreigner, anti-immigrant, and that's what it represents to me now. I don't have a problem with the flag. Maybe
I actually agree with you on that point.
10, 20 years ago, I would not have a problem with waving the Union Jack flag. I probably still wouldn't do it, but I wouldn't have a problem with it. Now, after it's been hijacked by Brexit, by right-wing nationalists, that's what is a bit uneasy with me, and I think that's why people
But you're overstating the presence of the BNP and EDL in Britain as a whole. Neither group has ever had an MP, and they have tiny representation in local government. And
Okay, sure,
that-
but Brexit,
they're-
Brexit and Nigel Farage are a lot
The
different,
BNP
and they are still right. It's
on
still
Twitter.
predominantly.
yes, in
Follow- follow
2015
us.
maybe, but it's 2021, and Nigel Farage is leading, what is it called, like Reform Party now, and that's
Okay, so but he was still the figurehead. Him and Boris Johnson were figureheads to Brexit, and Boris Johnson has said some racist things in the past. I'm not going to call him a racist because I'll bring up a whole new debate. But he that movement.
relevance
a
does
lot of
that have to the
Brexit
argument?
movement was started by fear of immigrants. That was a lot of what the Brexit movement was based on. If you look at some of the pictures on the Leave UK on the Leave website, some of them like people ducking under like barbed wire, like who are obviously not from the UK, and that's to me what it represents. It's not a racist flag, but I think it's a complicated flag. And I
For
think
me, it doesn't represent that. It represents the UK and the success the UK has had in the world and everything it stands for. I agree with you. It has been hijacked
the
by
success
these
the
right
UK
wing,
has had in the
by
world
these right
at
wing.
the expense of other
World War
people.
II, World War II success. When I
Yeah,
think of the Union Jack,
no,
I tend to
agree.
think of the World War II success and
When
World War One
I
and
see
stuff
the
like that.
Union Jack flag, I think of Nigel Farage and I think of the EDL. I want to
I don't think of that. I think of World
Okay.
War II success and stuff like that.
Okay, I'm gonna move it on. Let's go. I want to go to Cameron. I saw you rolling your eyes at me when I said that Brexit was a racist. But I want to.
Yeah,
ask
I mean,
you
it's
why
just
you
like
yeah.
you, I absolutely am. The reason I was rolling my eyes there is just I just feel like you never learn, do you? The people voted for Brexit.
Yeah.
Okay, we're 4 years on.
So?
It's done. Stop
So?
talking about it, please. It's doing my head in. Let me talk about the flag and let me talk about patriotism for a second. I do not see the flag in the same light as you. I definitely don't. I see the flag and I think of everything in Britain's history, all of Britain's culture wrapped up in one image. That's what I see. All of history's negatives, some of the things we did as an empire, some of the horrific things we did, so many of the positives that we've brought to the world and to ourselves and our own British people, the whole journey that our country has been on, the union, this is all wrapped up in this flag. And I'm proud of that flag because I'm proud of this country, I'm proud of our history, and I'm proud of our culture. That's what makes me a patriot, okay? And yes, I can actually, like Jose, I can accept your point that recently it has been somewhat hijacked by far right people, frankly, but it's also been used, if you look, for example, by the Conservatives when they were centre right with David Cameron at the helm. The Conservative logo was coloured in Union Jack colours, for example. Labour have used the Union Jack on a number of occasions. It's used across the political spectrum, okay? And I think that's positive. Now, talking about Labour, and it's been very clear from me from the beginning of Keir Starmer's premiership that Labour have been wanting to move towards a more patriotic edge because they've realised that the people of Britain are actually proud of their culture and they're proud of their country. And I think that's an important step forward. And I think it's a really good thing, actually, that Labour have realised that and they're moving in that direction. Because at the end of the day, we spend a lot of time in this country seeming to fight over whether we are actually a good country with a good history and a good culture. And so many people up and down this country, especially young people, seem to lean in the direction of thinking that our country is responsible for every evil in the world. And I don't accept that. I think that, you know, we have a history and that contains negatives and positives. We've got to accept that, but we've got to be proud of the country that we live in at the present. And I believe that that is a good place.
Sure, but I think when you bring on the point about Labour, I think Labour have to be attracting the young vote, and also the vote of people who like weren't born in this country as well, and that put a lot of this flag puts people who've come from different country, like migrants, immigrants, and that puts them off Labour. I think seeing that flag, because that flag to a lot of people represents hate and it represents division. I think. Rajan, I'll go to you.
Yeah, so for me, like what I was going to mention exactly what Cameron said before. You know, the flag, it's showed up in Conservative Party, in the Conservative Party logo. Labour's used it a few times. It's just a national icon, in my opinion, and whoever wants to use it can use it. It's not that big of a deal, in my own opinion. I mean, you will have people that will overreact, such as I saw the one about the butter, the Union Jack on the butter, and that was absolutely ridiculous, claiming to have, I don't want UKIP in my fridge. That was absolute scenes, but you know, it's our flag, and it's it's just our flag, you
Yeah.
know. I don't think it's got such big meaning behind it. Yes, you'll have some people claiming it's to hijack it, but everyone uses our flag because ultimately the people from the EDL and BNP, they're British as well. So, you know, they can use it if they'd like, and
But,
it's
but
just
to me,
universal.
the flag is
Yeah.
like, I don't think you can distill it down to something that simple as just anybody can use it and it represents like British people, because the British history is very complicated, entwined with racism, colonialism, slavery, and even more recently the British National Party and the EDL. It's a lot more complicated than just, oh, this represents like our culture and our movement. I'm gonna move on now because I want to talk. Yes, we're going back onto like COVID. I know it's going to be a bit depressing, but we have got vaccine talk later, which is all going to be very exciting. But first, I want to talk about mental health during this like lockdown, because I think this Tory government and their COVID response has led to people's mental health going down, because we've been in lockdown more than we've been able to go outside. We could have combated this virus a lot quicker, and then we could have and then we would have been in lockdown a lot less. I want to start with Tommy.
I agree that there should have been circuit breakers earlier in November when they were first proposed. I think it's good that we're in a lockdown, but I think it's very unfair of you to pin it on the government for the mental health going down because of the lockdown, since we were the ones that were advocating for the lockdown, and now we can't have everything, I guess. And people, there are societies, there are communities, there are companies that are reaching out to people, they're offering help, they're offering support. The community is doing enough. The government, I don't think it's really for them to help mental health. Their job is to protect the people, to serve other people.
Yeah, I want to go to Cameron because I'm sure he's going to refute my point that I made at the beginning. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like Tommy, I don't think it's fair for you to really pin it on the government. That obviously, I have actually been a pretty strong advocate over the last year in talking about mental health among all people, and especially young people, because I feel as though it was always obvious that mental health was going to seriously deteriorate during lockdown. And if I want to talk about the government for a second, I think what we've seen this week is a proper recognition of the struggles that people are going through at the moment. And what I'm talking about actually, of course, is the appointment of Dr. Alex George as the government's mental health ambassador. I think it's an excellent appointment. I've been following him for some time. And I think it's a really important time now that governments across the world, and here in the UK, the government starts to take mental health really seriously, because this is the time when it is at its worst, and I think it really is a serious issue. I'm glad to see, as I said, this appointment. I think it shows the government are taking it seriously.
Yeah, of course. But my point at the beginning on the Tories was more that we could have driven these cases down to very, very low, to maybe like maybe in the hundreds, maybe even in the tens, and I think we would have done a lot better. I've got some figures here. 45.6% of NHS mental health trusts reported a deficit. But I think that was in 2015, and I think it's got worse over time. My kind of hearing from it, I think there needs to be more funding. Jose,
correct me if I'm wrong, but Tommy said earlier on that the government's role is to help and protect the people. Surely by helping them through, people are having a lot of struggles with mental health, right? Surely the government's role is to help and protect the people, as you mentioned. Surely mental health is one of those things they should be helping and protecting them with. Just want to put that out there, because, you know, we're talking about this, but it is a role of theirs that they need to be taking seriously, which I don't think they are.
Yeah, Tommy, do you want to respond?
Yeah, but I think with the governments, they've got they've got puzzle pieces here, and it's a puzzle that won't work any way that you put it together. They've got to juggle mental health, they've got to juggle the pandemic, they've got to juggle the vaccine rollout. And I think two go together, but you can't have everything.
I understand they can't go all together, but I think the government still do need to be putting more effort into this. I agree with Felix. Extra funding needs to go to this, because I rarely agree with Felix, but more funding does need to go towards this to help people with mental health struggles. In fact, my mum had a colleague whose grandma died during the pandemic, and he seemed extremely sad and down. And she knew that at some point he was having a lot of struggles with mental health, and he had no one to talk to at the time, which is why and I feel, I'm not blaming the government, but I think the government should have been there to try help him, as it's their role to go and help the people.
Yeah, definitely. I just can't agree with Tommy's point there, because it's not like the government is juggling loads of things. Sure, maybe Boris Johnson is juggling loads of things, but the government can appoint people to focus specifically on mental health and what they can do better with that. So I don't accept the point that the government have too many things on their plate, because the government should never have too many things on their plate. They should be divvying up responsibility and giving it so enough people have enough things to focus on.
You don't want the government to be busy.
No, I do want the government. I do want the government to be busy, but I also don't want the government to be overwhelmed. That's what I'm trying to say.
There won't be, though. That's why I agree. There should be some funding into this, but at the moment, the main priority is saving lives, so then we can get back to that normal and helping these people.
Okay. I'll move on to Rajan. You can go now.
So I think obviously, appointing a mental health ambassador is a brilliant move. What exactly does his job entail? Does anyone have an idea about what he's going to do moving forward?
Well, his job will basically be to front the campaigns. Obviously, I want to slightly just touch on Felix's point. He has been appointed as an ambassador, not an advisor. I've no doubt that there are teams in the Department for Health and Social Care, as well as probably in the Prime Minister's personal teams, who are also advisors on mental health specifically. But what they need is that figurehead to spearhead a campaign to try and kind of lift people up in times like these, and to improve people's mental health. That's pretty much his job.
Thank you, Cameron. And that's exactly what I wanted to talk about, is because that's exactly what we need. I don't think mental health services is as a system that's feasible right now, considering everything else. Yes, it is possible, but I think for me personally, the best thing that we can do right now is rally up our people and educate our people on mental health. Educate people to say what to do if you can see a mate who's in trouble, making sure to check up on your friends, your family, those people in your contacts. Yesterday, I had a tweet from a mate at Brentford. He put it onto his main Twitter feed, and he was really going through some troublesome times. And I didn't know what to do. I was actually quite lost, because I was like, how do I respond to that? Someone who's possibly feeling suicidal. And then obviously I went up to the internet and tried to find some advice on how to do it, and I had to and I responded. But I think what we have, but Alex George, and what I hope he's going to do, more tips, more education to the public, and that collectively, because the government's not going to do it. Like Marcus Rashford with free school meals, the government's not going to do it. We have to rely on our people to do it, and we have to rely on the promise of our brilliant nation and our brilliant people to uplift everyone together. And that is what the Union Jack represents.
I know what Cameron would say to this, so I'm going to say it instead. Very blue sky politics, very much like flashy words and not that much action. But it is the government as well who've appointed Dr. Alex George as the advisor. So the government is going to do it. On this one, I'm defending the government. Lily?
Yeah, I was just going to go back to the point where you said the government has a lot on their plate. I think, and then you're saying mental health should be really important. I think for us, because it's an issue that really directly correlates to us, because we're young people and it's talking about youth mental health. I think that is at the forefront of our mind. So like it's an issue that concerns us. So that's why it's kind of harder to see from different perspectives. And also I think one thing that Dr. Alex George was saying on his Instagram was he's going to like what's it called? Introduce like mental health training programs into schools, which I think is imperative to like improve youth mental health, because I know for me, I struggle with my mental health sometimes, and my friends do a lot. And I think just at school, we have counselors, we have things like this, but a lot of other schools don't have access to those kind of things. And I think they're also choosing to fund some more counselors, because that's really important. But then also like education within mental health, and like teachers having these specialist training programs, because I go to like a wealthy like private school in West London. My teachers have this kind of training, maybe not as much as actually I would like, because I feel sometimes it is lacking, but even for me it's lacking. So I can imagine what it's like in state schools and things like that. So I really think there should be like more, because if you're going to actually like delegate these jobs and say, oh, actually the government does have too much on its plate, you need to pass it to the next thing that's most important. So like school and like education institutions, and like focus on that.
Yeah, and there's this really worrying trend from like everybody have kind of picked up on it on the panel. Everybody knows somebody who's like been through struggles or themselves have been through struggle. It's a lot of people who have like been through this, and especially from the younger generations. So there is there is going to be, I think, in the next our generation, the generation above us, are going to really struggle with their mental health, especially because of COVID. And I think Lily again makes a really good point there about education, and we need to talk about it with our teachers, with their students, and everybody around education has to have adequate training. So yeah, you make a really good point there. I'm gonna leave a few links down below for some advice and numbers to call if you're feeling like down or your mental health is in trouble. So I'll leave them below. But I'm gonna move on now. I'm going to move on to vaccinations, especially in Europe, because there's been this big debate this week about vaccinations in Europe. But now we have the vaccine. What point do we have to start unlocking? Tommy.
Oh, right. Well, I think when we get a good amount of people on both doses, I think our priority should be getting elderly people, as many as we can, first getting both doses to help them gain the immunity. But something I'm seeing is I had to go into hospital earlier today for an appointment, and I drove past 2 medical centres, 3 vaccination centres, and all of them were empty both ways. I'm not sure if that's just because of people that just didn't turn up for their appointments, which I doubt, or that they're not getting enough people on the scheme. I understand it's very hard to regulate. And the government did a really great job of getting the first dose out, but now we have to get that second dose as quickly as possible if we want to start unlocking.
Yeah, definitely. But I think on the vaccinations point, seeing them empty, from what I've heard and what I've seen, the reports seem to be very good, and it's how efficient it is. So I don't know what that could have been, but I'm not sure like it's due to the vaccine rollout. But Jose, do you want to go?
Well, I just want to point out, I know pretty much all of us disagree with Brexit, but this has been a Brexit success. I just want to say, so far it's been a success of Brexit that we didn't have to follow the EU. We were allowed to go on our own. I think the Pfizer CEO said that when the EU complained that that UK should give some of their vaccines over, he said, no, the UK were clever. They ordered very quickly and they got it over. However, I just want to point out a stat from Quick Take Bloomberg and said that we will return to life. Normal life will return in 7.4 years at today's vaccine rates. Now, obviously, I don't think that will be how it is, but I saw another statistic somewhere else, I forgot the source, that said international travel may not go back to normal for another 3 years. So we can open, which I don't believe completely, at how we're vaccinating in the UK so far. If we vaccinate people, all people above 40, coronavirus deaths will be going down much more. But I still do think that opening stuff up, we need to wait till maybe March. if you look at it over the summer, there were barely any there were coronavirus cases, but there weren't that many coronavirus cases and deaths. As soon as school opened, it skyrocketed again. So I think that's a bit misleading, the statistics they gave us for the originally for why cases were so high. And I think that will happen again, but we need to take it with a pinch of salt this time to realize that more people have been vaccinated, so they're safer from it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very disappointed to agree with this, but yeah, you're right. It has been a Brexit success. I suspect one of the only Brexit successes we're going to get, but it is a Brexit success nonetheless. Cameron, we don't.
Yes, 100%. It's so yeah, the vaccine has been a big Brexit success. There's no doubt. I don't accept the point. I'm just going to say one sentence quickly. That it's the only Brexit success. We've seen that all dairy milk is going to be manufactured in the UK from now on, which I think is a big success, as well as Nissan. Nissan manufacturing their new cars. But if I get back onto the vaccine point for a second, yes, I know what you're saying. Just let me.
When we started vaccinating, we hadn't left by then.
Do I look dumb to you? Do I look like I don't know that? Can I finish? Thank you. Yes, I know that we could have opted out of it back in last year. Anyway, the point that I'm making, yes, so on the EU, what we saw last week from them, I mean, trying to thinking of triggering Article 16 to construct a hard border for anything on the island of Ireland, absolutely shocking. Really, I mean, it just showed a total lack of care for the sensitivity of the Irish situation, and also the fact that they didn't even tell the Irish Taoiseach. Appalling. But here in the UK, I believe that our vaccine scheme is coming on. I just want to mention one thing I've just seen pop up on my phone that says all over 15s will be vaccinated in the UK by May. It's breaking news from 9 minutes ago, so I'm your source for that. All adults aged 50 and over will be offered the coronavirus vaccine by May. Now that's big, and I think that in May we should be really, really, really seriously thinking about getting back to normal, because at that point, I mean, we know that the people who are dying, they're mainly in these top 4 categories in the first place. And then, of course, when you've got all these over 50s vaccinated, it's only the young people who are vulnerable who will also have been vaccinated because they're in higher categories. I think that's important, and I think we're making good progress.
Okay, but I want to ask you a question now, just on that. What is the case? Is it cases or deaths you want to go on for when we start unlocking? And at what point does that happen? Because for me, it has to be a good test and trace system has to be in place. That is the number one thing that needs to happen before we start unlocking, because we need a good test and trace system so that new variants can't get into this country. And if they do, we can track them properly. And the more cases we have, the more of a chance there is for the next mutant variant, I think. When do you think is the right time, Cameron?
Yes, so there are so many factors that have to be taken into play here to make sure that we're reopening at a safe time. And as I say, the progress of the vaccination scheme is one of them. If you're going just based off the vaccination scheme, then that kind of May month seems like a reasonable time to be seriously unlocking. If you're going to take into account the other factors such as cases, I personally don't think that cases or the infection rate are as important as deaths, and the most important 2 factors besides the vaccination scheme progress are actually the death rate and the hospitalization rate.
But
we don't want our hospitals to be overwhelmed, and we don't to die. And so long as those 2 things have been mitigated, then at that point we can continue to unlock.
Okay, but what about when the next variant comes along, because we've got too many cases and all these cases are spreading, and then it's gonna mutate again? What happens after that? Because we unlock too early.
I think, to be honest, I'm not a scientist, and I think the government just have to listen to the scientists on that one, because at the end of the day, we're talking about reasonable people that have an understanding of how all this.
All right. God, stop spamming everyone. Daniel.
Well, I'd firstly like to point out that the vaccination effort is not because of Brexit. We were still in the single market. We were still effectively in the EU when we started our vaccination program. We could have still done all of this inside of the EU. So just pointing it out, okay. Second of all, we're no, but that was my point, to be honest. So, but it wasn't because we were out of the EU.
Well, no, the point is that we've got the success against the EU in the vaccine custody.
Yes, but we would have still had the success if we were still in the EU.
Well, yeah, because then the argument would never have existed in the first place.
Okay, I want to talk about the quarantine hotels, because so these quarantine hotels. So in the last few weeks, the government have been talking about this idea of quarantining people in hotels from red list areas. But I personally don't think it's gone far enough. But I want to open up the floor. I'll start with Piers, just to like set us off, really.
Well, I think it's important to note out that the government does not own these hotels. They have no rights at all to force these hotels to comply with the government making them take in people who are coming into the UK. And also the hotels are any hotels, because it's only hotels that are by an airport or a seaport. Those hotels will be running on a skeleton staff at the moment, and they logistically can't afford to maintain their full staff, despite having quite a lot of guests from coming into the UK. So it's quite a logistical challenge managing these hotels, and saying it doesn't go far enough is quite you're saying it's not going far enough when it's already gone too far in terms of how it can be handled, how it can be handled effectively.
In what sense?
Well, I mean, the hotels don't have the ability to host these coming into the UK whilst it's still making economic sense, and because, as I said before, they're running on very, very low staff. Most of their staff is still on furlough, so they still have to pay them as well, and the costs that these visitors will incur is just not worth it for a lot of these hotels. Well, yeah, and it's difficult because the visitors won't want to pay because they're being forced into these hotels, which means that either they don't pay, because if they don't pay, what's the government going to do? What's the government going to do if they don't pay? And eventually the government will just end up paying the hotels.
Okay, no, but that's just not true, because if they don't want to pay, they won't come to the UK, which in the end is a positive thing, because we don't want people bringing in cases. First of all, I think the border security has been completely lax throughout this COVID pandemic. We should be getting like pieces of paper from the travellers with why they've travelled to any country they've travelled to within the last 2 weeks. And I don't accept the fact that there's not enough hotels, because we've only been asking hotels that be near airports. So there's only a fraction of hotels in the UK, and we've only given them 24 hours to respond.
But when you've been people who have flown in the last year have been asked which countries they have come from or gone from. They've asked if they've had any relation to like China and the Wuhan province. They've been asked if they have any relation to Italy, and I'm sure there's like nowadays any relation to South Africa and Brazil. So
But reports from the ground have said that that's just not happening. They're not checking anything. I've been listening to the radio for the last few days, and every single person who's come in or out of the UK has said it's completely lax compared to the rest of Europe, and places like New Zealand, Australia, Korea, and all places like that. And people have been saying that our security is completely lax on this COVID-19.
Yes, but the UK is like and London is like literally one of the probably the largest international hub in the world, and it doesn't make sense that to compare London to Auckland or like
I was
or Canberra.
comparing it to Europe. There are lots of places in Europe with hubs. Yeah, I just want to move on because we've spoken about this for quite a while now, so I want to give other people a chance to speak. Yeah, Lily.
I was just gonna say that when people are like coming into the UK, if they're quarantining in their houses or like in, I don't know where else you quarantine, but off their own accord, you can't like 100% like enforce that. Like obviously you can with like threat of like legal action and everything, but if you're in a hotel, you can like contain it and you can ensure that it's only going to be in that like designated area. I don't know if I'm simplifying it too much, but if like you're in the hotel, at least that's only where like you could potentially spread it.
But my response to that would be, in Korea, they've tracked people's phones and their bank cards to make sure they're not going outside their houses.
Yeah, but Felix, we don't live in North Korea. We don't live in that kind of society.
It's South
If
Korea.
the government tracked our phones, would that work? No.
No, you can't. You can track people's phones.
Our society would not allow that.
To track people's phones and to give them they've given them 2 calls in this 2-week period. They've also sent 1 visit round to make sure that they're quarantining. And they've checked their...
Yeah, I feel like getting a text message is fine, but then, like, it's not... Like, we have a different, like, society to North or South Korea. Like, it's not going to be deemed as widely acceptable for someone to, like, for the government to be, like, tracking your phones. Like, I understand they can, like, send you a text message and something, but it's not going to be, like, the same sort of, like... We don't have the same sort of societal contract where that's, like, sort of something that you could do. It's kind of hard to explain because it's sort of indescribable quality, but... That's kind of what I'm saying.
All right, well, maybe...
Yeah, Felix, you're advocating for Big Brother policies right now.
No, I'm not. I'm throwing out suggestions. I'm throwing out suggestions and like making sure that I'm keeping people like held accountable. I never advocated for that. I just said that's what's happening in South Korea. Okay, I'm not necessarily advocating for like tracking people's phones and tracking people's bank cards. But I was just like trying to create discussion. I'm very sorry for advocating Big Brother policies. I'll try not to do it in the future. Oh yeah, Jose.
Firstly, I just want to point out, was that a bit of a authoritarian side coming out from you, Felix?
It wasn't.
I could tell.
I said, I cleared that up I was very clear about that. I'm not necessarily advocating for tracking people's bank cards and tracking their phones. I was merely just responding to that point and saying that's what they do in South Korea. I do not think that we should be tracking people's phones or their bank cards, but I do think we should be calling people twice. I think we should send them text messages probably daily, and I think we should send a police officer or...
Yeah, that means tracking people's phones.
No, it doesn't. It means sending people a text message. It's not tracking people's phones. It's sending them.
What good would that do? Wait, let me just say my point quickly. Right, Felix. Earlier on you mentioned about how Australia has the hotels quarantining thing. In 2019, approximately 9.4 million tourists visited Australia from overseas, compared to UK's 40.86 million. How are you going to be able to compensate that? I'm sorry, but UK has so many more travelers than other countries which use this hotel system that they won't have enough hotels or resources to keep all people like this. I think you have to find a way to keep some people exempt from this. I don't know how you're going to do that. I'm just putting out there that it's going to be impossible to impose. In a small country, not small by landmass, but by population, a small country like Australia, you could argue that it would work. But in the UK, I definitely don't think it would work properly. Yeah, it could work, but it wouldn't work for everyone.
Yeah, my response to that is, though, in Australia, they've been keeping like Australians from getting back into the country. Again, I am not advocating for stopping people, every single person to come into the country. I'm making that very clear, okay? Okay?
Should we put cameras in people's bedrooms as well now?
No, I am not authoritarian, and I don't believe we should track people's bank cards once again. Daniel.
Well, I'm a liberal myself. I personally believe in individual freedom, but I think extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures. And I think that either keeping people in hotels or tracking people in their homes. So, I mean, not having a camera, outside of their home, but maybe, sending a police officer daily to their home and, tracking their phone is a really important thing that we must do to stop the spread and keep people safe. I mean, obviously this would be ridiculous if if there wasn't a deadly pandemic going around. But I think when we have 100,000 people die, I think extraordinary measures must be taken to stop the spread.
Yeah. Would you advocate for putting bracelets on people to track their movements? Because I heard one caller on LBC advocating for that. So Daniel, would you advocate for putting tracking bracelets on people?
Maybe if they broke the rules, maybe if they went so maybe if they were quarantining for 2 weeks.
What liberal side are you talking about? This is not liberal.
You guys
No,
absolutely kill him for that.
Normally, I would obviously say that that's an absolutely ridiculous time. But if you had lost a family member, you'd be doing everything you can to try and stop other people's family members from dying. And I think it's more important to stop people from leaving their home than having people dying. And I think if somebody's already broken the rules, it's something you must do.
You guys better absolutely kill him for that, because you told me off pretty badly for just bringing up tracking people's phones. So he better be killed for that.
To be fair, 30 seconds before he said, "I'm a massive liberal. I advocate for people's freedom," and then said about putting a bracelet.
Yeah, I just want to finish here because Daniel's put something in the comments. He's just said his cousin lives in China and she broke the rules and they put a camera outside her home. Would anybody on the panel advocate for this?
If someone has already broken the rules and they do it a second time, yes, absolutely.
Wow.
What?
The problem with having a camera outside your home, and especially with bracelets as well, how are you gonna do it for every single person? Like, the costs of that are mental.
For every person that broke the rule? How many people have broken the
rule?
No.
So people coming into this country, then breaking the 2-week quarantine rule. I don't.
Why would you? Why? But I feel a fine, right? I feel a fine. I know it's going to sound a bit stupid, but I think when I came back from holidays, they didn't tell me anything. I didn't go out of the house parts to go to the supermarket once with my dad because they allowed that. They didn't really do anything to keep you at home. They never called us. They never texted us. They never did anything. I think the government should find a way to at least call you, surprising time of the day, just to check on you at least once. But I can't believe Daniel just said we should put cameras outside people's houses. It escapes me how
only
we
if they've already broken the rules, all right? Only if they do.
But my sister's friend got given a massive fine when they discovered that the family were breaking the rules. I think that's enough of an incentive for them to think, actually, let's not do it again. I think putting a camera outside someone's home is something that, the UK advocates very much against, considering the fact, sorry if you can hear my dad, considering the fact we advocate for freedom.
I just want to jump in here because how are we going to even know that people have broken the rules with our such lax security? Like, most people haven't been checked up on, even called by the police once. How are we going to know that these people have broken the rules, let alone putting a camera outside their house? I want to finish with a quote from a Zoom meeting from a council member. I want to finish with read the standing
orders. It's not a handful, is it?
And understand them. So that's what I'm going to finish off on today. Thank you very much to everyone for coming, and we won't see you next week because Sarah Olney interview is coming out.